Our next resolution for tonight is that foreign aid does more harm than good. And for 2 minutes of arguments for the motion, please welcome Prime Minister Victor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Foreign aid does more harm than good. Foreign aid I define as financial aid, money provided to the third world underdeveloped countries, and does more harm than good is harmful. It hinders, slows down the economic development of these countries. Many of us remember times of the great movement when African countries received independence from colonial powers, whether it was Great Britain, whether it was France, whether it was, in one couple of cases, Germany. Italy, many of these African countries started a new life. There was a lot of hope for the development of these countries. And these former colonial powers, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of necessity, started to provide financial help to these countries. However, it did not come with good results. What happened in the end, these countries were living from day to day. They built palaces, they bought Mercedeses, they bought fancy planes, Boeings or Airbuses, and the development did not take place. We know all saying that necessity is the mother of invention. There wasn't any necessity for these elites to create a society which would create jobs, education, and prepare the countries for the development. Another expression you know all too well is, you can give a man fish for a day, or you can teach him to fish for a lifetime. None of these things did happen. And that's the reason that International Monetary Fund and even Organization of African States came up with the suggestion that the foreign aid hinders development in these countries.
Thank you, Victor. And for the arguments against the motion, please welcome the Leader of the Opposition, Louis.
I'm interested how you started off and you told us how you talked about the third world. And as a Canadian coming from North America, a former colony, I think we're doing pretty well, actually. I think we've got education. I think we've got necessity. I think United States of America shows its universities. And I think that directly came from the input of those colonial powers. So I actually find it quite insulting to try to compare the effects in the now African nations, which you defined as the third world, and saying somehow that foreign aid doesn't help. You also mentioned the IMF and stating that there's no good comes out of the IMF. You try to tell that to somebody sitting in one of the refugee camps in Africa. Tell them, no, we won't give you any money because necessity is the mother of all evil. You look at the developments. You look at the vaccines that are being provided to Africa at the moment. HIV, the pharmaceutical companies, the Canadian government who is giving that money. No, we should let them die. This is what the government would tell you. That's how things are supposed to work. The rich will get richer and they should stay poor. We don't want development. The money that goes into Africa, where is that going? The Chinese money is developing the social media. They are developing the computer networks. They are giving cell phones. They're giving them education. The government is stating that no, we should let them pour and let them try to work it out. This is not something that will work. When you've got famines in Africa, the government would suggest that we just let them die. That's okay, not a problem. Is this something that you in the audience want to support? You want to have this idea that we should not give any foreign aid? We shouldn't be helping these countries? My position is very clear. Aid, by its definition, is aiding countries when it's done correctly. You can cite examples where there's mistakes, but I think overwhelmingly, when you look at the former colonial areas such as North America, Canada, Australia, I think they're doing a lot better now than other areas that did not get economic development from the trade that they got from Europe at the time. So it's just a matter of time before we see that. So I urge you strongly to vote against this money-sucking government.
Thank you, Louis. And for 1 minute of closing remarks, please welcome back the Prime Minister, Victor.
What a mishmash of information. It's unbelievable. I could not believe it. We in Canada, United States, we did not get foreign aid. That's an example for not receiving a foreign aid. Whether it was Canada, I didn't want to bring up Canada. You have South Korea, you have China, all these countries, they do not rely on foreign aid. And I have never stated that International Monetary Fund should not provide foreign aid. But I said that after 50 years of providing foreign aid without any strings attached to leaders of the many African countries, they did not utilize that foreign aid properly. It was not provided properly, and that money was wasted. I have never suggested that we should not provide medication or help in case of famine. Of course they do. International Monetary Fund did not say that either. Foreign aid has to be structured, but not the way it has been done in the last 50 years. Ladies and gentlemen, and that's how I define foreign aid, how it was. Yes, it's changing, it should change, and there are ways to build hospitals and education which would help those countries in the long run. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Having heard both sides of the argument, we'll take the popular vote. Those who are voting in favor of the government's arguments, please raise your hand. 9. And those who are voting against the motion in favor of the opposition's arguments. 9.
It's left to the banker.
I vote for the government's arguments, and therefore the motion is carried.